Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Permafrost. Today, it's time to fight. The first thing I did was make a waystone, allowing us to teleport back to our base really easily as long as we have another one of these. I bred up a lot of cows and sheep for better food sources, which by this point I think is long overdue, and I made a little makeshift villager trading hall here in order to get a lot of enchanted books for what I spent most of my time on. This set of armor right here. As you can see, everything here is pretty kitted out. We have protection, unbreaking, and mending on all of them. But the important part here is none of those. The important part is that enchantment that you see called Adjusted Warming. This allows us to survive out in the cold pretty much indefinitely, and that has been such a ridiculous quality of life upgrade that I will never have any armor without this going forward. In fact, it allowed me to take some really long trips to explore the world more than usual and find some interesting stuff for us to check out. I was able to see a lot of cool stuff along the way. A dragon over in a lair just a couple hundred blocks away. This one's one of the young ones, so honestly, I think we can take him. We have death worms jumping up and down through a city. Not too interested in these, but they're there. And I also saw some cool women sitting on top of a rock in the middle of an ice lake. Not sure what they were up to, but something told me that I should keep my distance. But all of that is boring. What's not boring is what we are going to do right now. Right after I fill this mana tablet, that is. With this and the rest of my inventory all situated, we can now get to what I promised you guys last episode. And that starts with evicting this schmuck over here who thinks that he can just live in my backyard rent-free. Sorry, buddy, but I don't do freeloaders. Let's see what he's got. Well, immunity to arrows is one thing. Oh, and he's got a lot, is our answer. Okay, cannot move. Alright. Well, we're doing a lot of damage to him, if nothing else. But getting frozen is not going to help with that. Alright. Well, that's that, I guess. Not as bad as I thought. That strength 2 really came in clutch. Next up on today's enemies list is this dumb dragon. He hasn't really done anything wrong for me, but I've suffered enough in the cold of this world. I'm out for blood today. Bit of a chaotic fight. Easy money. Hey, some flesh. Fire Dragon Heart. Stage 3. Could have gone a lot worse. With those guys out of the way, let's see if we can't get a better challenge out of an actual dungeon. Oh, this one seems to only go up, so we'll see what's in here, but I guess this one won't be as long as I was expecting. Hidden spawner. Sneaky. Interesting. Oh, a waystone. That's really nice to just have. Seems to be a Vex here. No longer is a Vex here. But we did get a waystone and a lot of gold from the top of this place, which is nice. But I guess that means that the underground section must belong to that building, so this one was just a warm-up. Well, with that other dungeon having not been as expansive as I thought, let's hope this one is a little better. Yes, this one does go down, as expected. Let's go straight first. Cake's always a good sign, isn't it? I'm gonna not worry about looting too much until I've cleared most of the place out. I think it's more important to do that first. And I can hear spiders. Also, don't know if there are any traps in these. There's that guy hidden behind a corner, though. Well, that was level 1 completed. On to level 2. Now, level 3. Now, I don't know if you can see that guy. I don't know if he's a boss or a natural mob, but he is scarier than the dragon. I do not like the look of him. This is level 5, and at this point, we are at y equals 23, so there can't be many left. Now this one is interesting. I don't know how well you guys can see that, but this is an Enderman spawner. Have not seen those before, but that would be really useful because even at this stage in the game, Ender Pearls are still very hard to come by. Now this is what we want to see. That right there, that spawns these guys. A very, very good way to get a lot of wither skeleton skulls, assuming they can die. They don't seem very keen on that right now. Well, good news and bad news. The good news is they can die. The bad news is it takes a specific potion called a consecration potion to make them able to die, and I only brought one of those with me. I didn't think we'd need it. Clearly, I wasn't thinking ahead. Let's go see if the other areas are a little better. Now, at this point, I think it's only fair that I explain why those withers over there could not be killed. In this pack, most mobs need to be on fire or consecrated to be damaged. With my fire aspect sword and a flame bow, it's pretty easy to light most mobs on fire. The slight tiny detail that I may have overlooked is that wither skeletons cannot burn. As a result, they need to be hit with what is called a potion of consecration, which I have made a few splash potions of. I didn't think to bring all of them because I didn't realize that they would be quite this necessary. I thought in the worst case I would just, hit something a lot of times until it died. But those guys do seem to actively require to be consecrated. So I'm gonna head back to the base real quick, and I'll be right back. And we're back. And this time, we've got a lot of these splash potions of consecration. So let's see if we can manage to not get stopped by any of these withers. Well, as you might be able to see through the walls here, I'm not sure 5 splash potions are gonna be enough. Now, I wouldn't want to speak too soon, but I think that I have almost the entirety of this bottom floor here lit up, which means that none of these spawners right here should be able to trigger and spawn their evil, hateful mobs. So at this point, I think we're actually relatively safe. If the mobs spawn, then we're in trouble because we don't have a reliable way of doing damage to them. We just have a few potions. But if they don't, that means that we might be able to turn some of these really, really advanced mobs with, as you can see, diamond armor into a mob farm, which would be really cool. But that's definitely a later project. All that's left to do right now is the best part, and that's loot everything. This is what we were able to get. It might not look like the most amazing thing right off the bat, but there's actually a lot of items here that are otherwise really difficult to get. Ink sacs are actually really rare, although not used that much, because squids don't spawn. Similar story for slime balls. I haven't seen a single slime so far, so having over half a stack of this, really handy. We also got some really nice enchantments, mending, we have protection, we have sharpness, generally useful stuff. But the biggest two items that we've gotten out of this are ender pearls. 10 ender pearls is more than I've gotten in the entirety of this series so far, just for some context. And the other thing is this old eye, which is a story item that will become relevant when we want to try and beat the pack. But enough about looting. We're now gonna switch back to Botania, because as you can see, I have almost a full mana pool here, just a tiny bit left to go. But this took a lot of work to feed these endoflames enough fuels to get it this far. And with the amount of Terra Steel that we want, this is not going to be nearly enough. This is 5% maybe. We need to step our mana generation up. And to do that, we're going to go back to our old friend, the Petal Apothecary. Throwing in some runes and flowers, as well as some seeds, gets us a Thermalily, which is a flower that produces mana by consuming lava source blocks. There's not exactly a lot of lava around here, but I know somewhere where there is. Everybody, welcome back to the Nether. I have set up 4 Thermalilies here, each with their own mana spreader and mana pool, and I am situated right next to a really big lava lake. But rather than just grabbing buckets of lava and putting them here, which you can see does work, we're going to go a little bit bigger with this. And in order to think bigger and get more lava to these Thermalilies, we're going to be using the Create Hose Pulley, everyone's favorite mechanic. I've got a water wheel with lava, of course, set up right here, and when I place this hose pulley here, you'll see that it starts to retract all the way down into this very large lava lake. If I connect some fluid pipes over here to the hose pulley, and then down into these little spots on the edges of the Thermalilies, you'll see that pretty soon lava is going to start coming out of this. Now, I'd forgotten to give it some rotational power to pull the lava out from the hose pulley, but with a few cogs there, which is easily done, you can see that this is now pumping lava into this block here, which means that these Thermalilies can access it, and just like that, the mana spreaders will activate and begin filling up our mana pools. And because this is considered a bottomless supply, as you saw it was a huge lava lake, Create considers it completely infinite. This is fully self-sustaining and can produce mana with no player effort as long as I want it to, pretty much. So all that's left now is to connect these other two and then wait for some of that sweet mana. As you can see, all 4 of the Thermalilies are now working. But I went ahead and ran the numbers, and I'm not entirely satisfied with this setup. Our previous setup, which consists of 4 sad endoflames, could create enough mana for 1 Terra Steel ingot in about 140 minutes. Obviously, that's terrible. Our new Nether setup here, meanwhile, can generate enough mana for a Terra Steel in about 90 minutes. That's a big improvement compared to before, but an hour and a half for 1 Terra Steel is awful. We need to do better, and I think I know how that's going to happen. It's been a few hours worth of work, testing and then actually implementing this, but I'm really happy with how this turned out. I'll explain how it works in a minute, but the important part for now are the numbers. Our first setup took 140 minutes to generate enough mana for 1 Terra Steel ingot. Our second, which I just showed, took about 90. This one right here takes 5 minutes to generate 1 full mana pool. The way this works is actually pretty simple, but it does require some explaining of the Thermalilies mechanics. You see, rather than just constantly generating mana like the endoflames do, The Thermalily has two sections. First, it generates mana for 45 seconds after receiving lava, and then it enters a cooldown period for 5 whole minutes, 300 seconds. This period means that it does not generate any mana during this, but still consumes lava, and for obvious reasons, that's bad, and slows down the entire process. What I've set up here is a hovering hourglass from Botania, a timer, in effect, that every 42 seconds pulses these deployers from Create, which punch out the Thermalilies before they've had time to reach the cooldown phase. The Thermalilies then get spit out by these funnels, and a Ranuncarpus from Botania places them back down again, now fresh, and with no memory of the fact that they've just spent 42 seconds consuming lava and producing mana. What this effectively means is that instead of the Thermalili's usual 45 seconds of producing and 5 minutes of not producing mana, what we have here is 42 seconds of producing mana, a second or two of downtime, and then right back to it, 42 more seconds of producing mana. Combined with having 10 Thermalilies this time, as opposed to the 4 that we had previously, this means that we can produce a ton of mana and that we're going to be able to blaze through the remainder of Botania with this. I've gone ahead and transferred over a bunch of mana right next to our terrestrial agglomeration plate. I did this using mana tablets, which, yes, was very annoying, but in order to make our first piece of terrasteel, it's going to take a very long time with these mana spreaders, so I want them as close as possible, and I want them going as fast as possible. As soon as we make our first piece of terrasteel, we'll be able to switch to a faster way, but for now, this is all we have to work with. Now that we have our first terrasteel, we can put it to use, not for any armor or weapons, but to make the Elven Gateway Portal. First, we're going to turn it into 9 terrasteel nuggets, the exact amount we need. Then, we're going to need 2 Natura pylons and 1 Elven Gateway core. In order to assemble the Elven Portal, the Elven Gateway core goes here at the bottom, surrounded by 2 living wood. And then the rest of the portal has a similar pattern, but instead of the gateway core, you're going to use glimmering living wood, which is just living wood plus glowstone. Placing 2 Natura pylons on top of mana pools next to the portal, or close by, will allow you to right-click and open a portal to the Elven Realm. The main reason why we made this portal was so that when we toss a mana pearl into it, we would get this pixie dust out. I've gone ahead and used the Elven Portal to trade for some pixie dust to make spark augments, which allows us to improve this whole mana system by a lot. All of the 5 main generating pools have recessive augments, which means that their mana gets pushed into this pool right here, which is just a regular classic spark. Over here, on the terrestrial agglomeration plate, we have a dominant spark, which means that whenever it requests mana, and I put these items down, it will start taking mana from that central pool as the recessive sparks fill it up. This effectively allows for a much faster mana transfer. As you can hopefully clearly see, this is going really quickly for terrasteel. And it means that we'll be able to make our ingots in bulk and at a relatively good pace. But with our Botania mana generation system done and several hostile mobs and dungeons conquered, I think it's a good place to wrap up this episode. It's taken me quite a while to record all of this, so definitely gonna be later than usual, but what can you do? Next episode, I am hopeful that we'll have full terrasteel armor, that will be able to fight the Guardian of Gaia, and that will be able to explore a few more structures around the world that I've seen. For now though, that's all. See you next time.